So yes, as you were saying, the presenter of this talk should be Aliki Papa. She's our PhD student, but she is actually finalizing her writing up, so she's not. She asked me to present for her, so here I am. This is her PhD. This is her PhD work, as I said, supervised by the other three authors. So human culture, which is our complex, refined behaviors, knowledge, values, institutions, etc., is unique among all species. And one of the tenets of cultural evolutionary theory is that human, specifically cultural evolution, is cumulatively adaptive. This means that beneficial modifications are retained and then they accumulate generation after generation to yield sophisticated cultural traditions that could not have been devised or invented by single individuals or in a single generation. Things like going to Mars, for example, represented here by this rocket. In our study, we are going to ask one fundamental question, which is, what is the role of language in the evolution, in the development of cumulative, adaptive human culture? Now, it seems that the key, or one of the keys to human cumulative culture is a special type of social transmission, specific kind which is different from social transmission in other species. And this enables copying faithfully so that beneficial innovations are retained and are not lost. So I'm going to give you an example of a complex cultural tradition, which is nixtamalization. You may have heard of it. This is a treatment for corn, which was invented by the Aztecs about more than 3,000 years ago and is still used nowadays. This process involves several steps. So this is corn, and this is the end product, prepared food. You could just mill the kernels and make the dough and prepare your food. But nixtamalization is this process which involves several intermediate steps, including putting an alkaline medium and peeling the kernels and boiling it for a long time and so on. And this greatly increases nutrition and reduces the toxins. So it's really adaptive. The thing is that these actions that you see here are really opaque in the sense that for an observer, it's not obvious what they do, right? So a naive observer would just say, okay, let's just mill and prepare the food. So a naive observer would not know that you really need to do this and perhaps would lose this action, would not do them, and this tradition would be lost. So it makes sense to think that language may help transmit this kind of actions, this kind of opaque actions or seemingly irrelevant actions, as I will be calling them. Now, in 2005, Horner and Whiten made an extraordinary finding with respect to copying irrelevant actions. So what they did an experiment where they presented chimps and human children with a sequence of actions like this in order to retrieve a reward. And some of the actions were irrelevant and some or unnecessary for extracting the reward, and some of the actions were relevant or necessary. The chimps behaved in a logical, rational way, and they only, when it was clear that an action was not necessary, they didn't copy. Why would they bother? However, the children copied many of the irrelevant actions. They did what is called overimitation. They did things that were unnecessary, even when it was obvious that these actions were unnecessary. So humans, but not chimpanzees, so uniquely humans, we can say in our lineage, do overimitation. We copy actions even if they're not obviously useful and unnecessary, or even if we don't understand what they're for. Now, in this study, Horner and Whiten, there was no language involved. It was done with chimps and children. Chimps don't do much language, but other studies have explored the role of language. And some of those studies compare demonstrating actions for participants, as in the previous study. So there was a demonstrator here doing the actions in front of the participants. Some of these demonstrated actions, and in other conditions, they would do verbal instructions. So instead of showing, they would be telling people what to do. And what the studies have found is that we people tend to copy actions more when they are demonstrated than when we are told about them. So in a way, we follow more do as I do than do as I say in certain actions like trying new food or showing aggressive behavior, or even for learning a new toothbrushing technique. Now, other experiments compare a demonstration here, just purely demonstration, against demonstration plus verbal instruction. So demonstration with or without verbal instruction. And some of these studies find that adding verbal instruction is more effective than demonstration for transmission in some tasks like extracting a reward from a complex box, or making baskets that can carry as much rice as possible, or in certain tasks of tool making, learning how to make tools. But in other tasks, other studies found no difference. So adding verbal instructions made no difference in transmission, like making paper airplanes that can fly as far as possible, or other tasks involving learning how to make stone tools. So in our study, the aim is to explore the effects of linguistic instruction on social transmission. So specifically, we're going to test demonstration versus verbal instruction, so demonstration only versus verbal instruction only, on the transmission of relevant and irrelevant actions, and we're going to do this in adults and children. Now, the task we used was similar to the one I just showed earlier, so it's extracting a reward from a box using a rod. This includes relevant and irrelevant actions. And we used transmission chains where there was a seed, there was an initial sequence of actions to relevant to irrelevant that was produced by a participant that we trained. And then this was shown to have the first generation in a chain. The output of this generation was given as input to the next generation, and so on. So 3 generation chains. The conditions, of course, we had demonstration only and verbal instruction only. I will describe them in a moment. And our participants were 6 to 8-year-old children or adults. So the chains would be of all chains of all children, or chains with only adults. Now, in the next slide, you're going to see a video of one of the original action sequences, and that includes these 4 actions. As I said, the first 2 are irrelevant and necessary. The last 2 are relevant. And this is the child participant that we trained. So this was the seed for the child, for all of the chain, or the child chains. This is an irrelevant action, also irrelevant, relevant, and relevant. Okay, so this is what the participants saw in the video. Now, to describe the demonstration and the verbal instruction condition separately, in the demonstration condition, we told participants, I will show you a video and then you can have a go, right? And then they would have the box, they would see the box in front of them and they would have a go at taking out the reward. So they would watch the video 3 times and then they would have a go, and we would record. Well, I say we, Aliki, video record. She did all of this. She recorded the participant, how they copied, what they did. And of course, this video would be then shown to the next participant in the chain. It's worth mentioning now that all participants were from Cyprus. This was all done in Cyprus, so they're not your typical Anglo-Saxon participants, university students, which is nice. Now, in the verbal instruction condition, the participant was told, listen to this, and then you can have a go. And they were played an audio file 3 times. Then they had a go. They did the task with the box, and they were video recorded. Then then Aliki told them, now I will play you a video of yourself, and you tell me what you do in it. And of course, we recorded this narration of what they did. Audio recorded, and this is the audio that was taken to the next participant in the chain. Now we run 20 chains of 20 chains of children, 20 chains of adults, and these are the kinds of things that they were doing. Okay, some were taking longer time, less time. Now, we then coded the videos and recorded which actions were produced in each condition, and we applied linear mixed effect models and chi-square tests to analyze and to get the results that I'm going to present now. Now, results. Which actions were copied, right? So just like an introduction, overall, there was more copying of causally relevant than irrelevant actions. This is to be expected. This is what happens in all of these experiments. The interesting thing is that some irrelevant actions are copied at all. And we also found that children copied slightly more actions than adults, slightly, just significantly. But the most interesting finding was a three-way interaction between transmission, demonstration or verbal, the relevance of the action, and the age of the participant. So in this graph, we have the bars represent the proportion of the actions that a participant saw. So if a participant sees a number of actions, what proportion do they reproduce, do they copy? We have adults here in this box and children in this other box. And in gray, we have verbal transmission, and in black, demonstration. And here we have irrelevant actions and relevant actions, irrelevant and relevant. Now, just to show what I said earlier, there was more copying of relevant than irrelevant action, both in children and adults. And now looking at differences between linguistic or verbal instruction and demonstration, on the other hand, so between the gray and black bars, what we see for adults and also for children and relevant actions, that there is more copying in the demonstration condition. It's like they say, do as I do. When they say do as I do, is more leads to more copying than do as I say. Okay. So adults do as they see more than when they are told linguistically. And this is both for relevant and irrelevant actions, and as I was saying, also for children in relevant actions. However, interestingly, in the case of children and irrelevant actions, they are the ones that are more crucial for transmission, because these are seemingly irrelevant actions are the actions that need to be transmitted, that are difficult to transmit in cultural evolution, okay, that are difficult to retain. So we see that children specifically, actually, when they are told, they retain more irrelevant actions. They retain irrelevant actions a lot in the verbal condition, but not in the demonstration condition. And this is the opposite pattern to what we've seen before. Now, just moreover, if we say, we can see that if we look at the verbal condition only, the light gray bars, for irrelevant actions or for overimitation, we also see that children copy more irrelevant actions than adults, clearly more, and that children in the verbal condition are copying almost as many irrelevant actions as relevant actions. So this suggests that when children are told verbally, children are blind to the relevance of the action. If they're told what to do something, they don't evaluate it, they just do it. However, when children are shown something, when they see someone doing something, they evaluate it, they think about it, and they copy more if it's relevant, and less if it is irrelevant. It's like language removes your rationality capability in children. This is our finding. So linguistic instruction drives children, but not adults, to copy seemingly irrelevant actions, to do overimitation. So we set out to explore whether verbal social transmission could have an effect on cumulative, adaptive, human, specifically human cultural evolution. Is there a contribution? And what this study has found is that children specifically respond to language by overimitating. Now, for many cultural traditions, children are the main learners, the ones that need to absorb the culture. So children or naive people need to absorb, need to learn everything in a way blindly. And then later on in life, they can evaluate, is this good? Is this adaptive? Do I want to keep this or not? But it's good that they've learned it in the same place rather than initially evaluate something. Because if you say in the nixtamalization, do I need to do this? I don't see why I should do it. Then you don't do it and you lose it. Anyway, so Cumulative cultural evolution is the strongest predictor of human fitness. And we see here a map of Europe. Let's see how humans have spread very visibly
you have
from
5
space.
minutes.
Thank you. So humans have spread. We are a very successful species, in great part thanks to technology, to culture. Also, since natural selection will favor anything that improves our fitness, then we can infer that natural selection may have favored the evolution of language, not specifically among other things, because it supports overimitation, which in turn supports cumulative cultural evolution, which in turn supports our fitness. I'm going to leave this slide for a moment for you to see. Okay, so I'm going now to the conclusion. In conclusion, just to repeat a bit the story, cumulative cultural evolution results in cultural traits or cultural traditions that could not have been invented by a single individual. Okay? These complex traits normally have opaque elements that don't look relevant. And so the learner will not be prompted to copy if they're very rational. So the retention of these opaque traits cannot be achieved by imitators, by people who are looking to understand why to do things. Instead, it requires more blind imitators, more arbitrary or blanket imitators, such as over-imitators. Now, in this study, we've shown that language favors over-imitation in children, and children are among the main learners in culture. And culture is crucial for our survival and reproduction. This therefore we're suggesting that language may have been selected because of its role in promoting not just culture generally, but specifically over-imitation, this very specific, very human, unique form of social transmission. Thank you. And also, I should say there's a preprint, which is it's here, and this will hopefully be published soon. It's under review after a couple of revisions, so hopefully it will be out soon as well. Thank you.